Module 5, how can I manage conflict and how should my strategies change over time across different types of relationships? So folks, we've been talking a lot about energy, a lot about emotional intelligence and strategies to become more effective, building these wonderful external and internal relationships. And we cannot have a conversation without relationships without talking about something pretty important, which is conflict. So how are we going to manage conflict and be more successful? You probably have already guessed that yes, the emotional intelligence will come into this conversation, but we're going to get a little bit more specific about some specific things you can do to have positive interactions. Why, folks? Well, negative interactions in the workplace can be quite costly. Here's the deal with the professionalism piece. In our personal world, people tend to be forgiving. They are in professional world too, but people tend to be very forgiving. We can have negative interactions, but you come back, you know, you break some bread, you have some chicken if you're vegan or vegetarian, maybe a little bit of tofu, whatever that is. You come back and you're able to say, yeah, I'm sorry, Mom, or I'm sorry, son, whatever that is, and things are okay. In the workplace, we tend not to have that tofu and chicken exchange, and so we have these negative interactions that fester over time. And so our capacity to manage conflict effectively is going to be the foundation for long-term successful relationships within the workplace. So let's talk about that, because we're all about adding value, folks. What can you do to deal with difficult people? Now, I will tell you, I've taught courses for the last about 12 years, and out of thousands and thousands of people, I have them tell me who are difficult people. And they'll make lists of people. There are lazy people. There are stallers. There are emotional hotheads. There are people that are constantly complaining. And then I ask them a very important question. And I'm going to ask you the question right now. Are you ready for it? Are you ready? What kind of difficult person are you? So what's interesting about these classes is, of all the difficult people that we mention, often people tend not to ever describe themselves. No one raises their hand, me, I'm a complainer, me, I'm a backstabber. It's not quite how we describe ourselves. However, if these people exist, maybe they don't, then we likely play a role in this difficult landscape. So how do we deal with difficult people, which includes me? Which includes you. What do we need to do? So we're lightening up a little bit. Here are a couple of things. Everybody wants the same thing, right? We want to be taken seriously, we want to be listened to, we want to be respected, we want to receive some relevant responses, and we want to be trusted, and we want to be able to provide that trust to others. When you are dealing with people that are difficult and you have labeled them as such, just your thinking about them as a difficult person is a barrier to you being able to do these things that will support in making the relationship more positive. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Dealing with some difficult situations. So what difficult situations do you have right now? What's happening in your life? Here are a couple of examples, and you can see on the slide. We'll talk about a couple of them. You're speaking with a customer when you receive a call. So you've got those things where someone keeps interrupting you and you can't seem to focus. That's a difficult problem. You're on the phone when another customer shows up to your desk and they want your undivided attention. You're trying to give good service to one person, somebody else wants your attention. What do? You have a pressing deadline. You have all these other things happening in your personal life, and you have a boss that wants it done now, and they don't seem to care about your problems. That is a difficult situation. Really big stuff here. And then again, one of the really difficult things that I know I struggle with is there are times where you may have to say no. So someone is asking you to do something, whether it be a customer, a coworker, a boss, whoever is in your life, and you have to say, I cannot do it. And you're struggling, trying to figure out what will be the consequences of that, and how am I going to say no in such a way that communicates that I am a team player and with you. Really, really interesting stuff here. So a couple of things that you want to do in any difficult situation. Number one, check that emotional intelligence. If you feel like that old good amygdala, yeah, you can say that, amygdala. If you feel like that good amygdala is being attacked, take a pause for just a second. You might want to revisit the conversation when you're able to get that frontal cortex back in the right place of thinking clearly. But here's what you can do. Show empathy is the very first thing. So really speaking to the person that you're having this difficulty with and trying to understand where they're coming from. You do not have to argue with them, but just say, I understand that you need this done today. And it is my focus right now to figure out how to make sure that you're able to get your needs done and for also for me to be able to meet my other obligations. Can we brainstorm about how we can make that happen? Really important stuff there. So showing empathy, de-escalating anger, being able to calmly approach situations with a clear response. Okay? So how do you turn these difficult conversations around? A couple of things that you can do, and go ahead, you got 7 things. Lucky number 7, you can read those on the slide. I'm going to bring your attention to just a couple of things. If someone is angry, we're moving on down to number 6. If a customer is angry, and that is a boss is angry, that is maybe a coworker is angry, what are you going to do? I'm going to teach you a strategy right now that will support you when someone is angry. So it's called an A in communication. And you will remember this. You'll have some information on this in just a moment. It's an A in communication. The first thing you're going to do is absorb what they said. So let me act this out a little bit for you. I'm going to do a little bit of acting here. So you're having a conversation. Someone says to you, act out, Talia, everything that you did with this report is absolutely wrong. What's going to happen now is when I go into this meeting, I might look like a fool, and this is completely unacceptable. I'm going to absorb it. And I'm going to actually, believe it or not, ask it, can you tell me specifically what was in the report that was not acceptable? Because if I were you and I got a report that wasn't acceptable and I felt like I was going to look like a fool, I would be equally angry. What exactly happened in the report that is disturbing you? So this forces the person to de-escalate because you're asking them to get out of their amygdala and into their frontal cortex, and they're going to specifically tell you exactly what happened. At that point, so you absorb it, you ask a question, then you'll agree with something that they said, which you're saying, I agree with you. If I felt like that, I was in your shoes, I would be angry as well. And then you're going to add, I also, so I agree with you, and, not but, and I also believe that I did what I thought was expected of me. The next question is moving on. Can you support me in making sure that we fix this? And after this, can we have a conversation about how we can make sure that these kinds of mistakes don't happen again so that we can have better communication, right? So a very calm way of approaching the situation in A in communication. You ask, you absorb, you agree, you add your point of view, and then you ask again for support. Really important piece. That's how you deal with someone that is angry. All right, we did that pretty quick, folks. You might not have picked it up, but remember, you can pause, you can rewind, and you can play this over and over again until you get it. You want to be powerful? Use that A in communication, and things will be absolutely transformed. All right, that's turning difficult conversations around. Let's talk about setting limits. Who out there has a hard time setting boundaries? My name is Talia, and I have a hard time setting boundaries. And what do I do to set better boundaries? So one of the issues with boundary setting and with setting limits is that we often say things that may not be the most appropriate or the most effective way to getting the results that we want. And so one of the things that you may have said in the past, I don't know, that's not our policy, that's not my job, we don't do things like that. That's something that tends not to be customer focused. So here are a couple of things that you can do to establish that common ground and make sure that you're setting boundaries in a way that increase your effectiveness, that increase your ability to build and maintain relationships that get results. So the other thing, let the customer vent. Sometimes people actually need space, and remember folks, real quick, as we talk about customer, we're actually referring to boss, co-worker, internal and external relationships. Really key here. But let the customer vent. Listen attentively to what's really happening within the customer. What are they angry about? So you can use your A model there, okay? The next thing is express empathy. The very first thing that should come out of your mouth is, I hear you and I understand where you're coming from. That completely de-escalates anger. Very, very important. Make sure that you understand the problem, and if you don't assume. Ask questions to make sure that you're clear about what the problem is, and challenge that person to share with you, do I have the problem clear? Is this what you're being challenged with? So for the example that we gave in the last session, one of the pieces is to say, let me be clear, the problem is that I formatted the report incorrectly, or the problem is that the content wasn't what you expected. So getting really clear on the problem. Then you work together to find a solution. You ask your customer, coworker, boss, if they agree with the solution, and then again you follow up. So there's this establishing common ground, there's this patience, there's this flexibility, there's this energy, and you're following a very strategic path on how we work together. Folks, I don't know if you've thought about this already, but I think about this often. A lot of these things that we're talking about do not come naturally, so we certainly have to learn skills to get along better with each other. So what can you do to save relationships and manage the difficulty? We're going to add on to these strategies. Here's your checklist, folks. Ask questions, show interest, build the connection, empathy, 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 empathy. Did I say empathy? I'm not sure. Yes, empathy is something you want to do. Sharing your point of view, saying and, not using but. You also might have heard of using the I statements, letting people know how you feel, but also acknowledging how others feel. And then lastly, asking for support. This is not a one-way street. I need to work with you so we can find a collective solution. Really important. All right, how you doing out there? We're rocking. I hope you're getting some good strategies. As we're thinking about this, keep in the back of your mind, how can I use this? What about me? Where do I fit into this bigger picture idea of what it takes to build and maintain effective relationships? All right, so here are some other things, another checklist. You see it right there, a couple things. Empathy, empathy, empathy. Be fair, be in control of your emotions, be open to options and alternatives, and be a source of information. Just want to say one thing about being fair. One of those things is keeping it focused on the problem, not the person. So often when we have conversations with people, I don't know what this is, and us as psychological human beings, we want to focus on you did this and you did that. Lighten up a little bit. Focus on the problem, what happened, and how can we collaborate to move toward a solution. Really important. Don't get out the bat, folks. Don't get out that emotional bat. All right, we are going on to Module 6. I hope you join us again. Just take a few moments to think about what we've talked about. Where do you stand in the way that you manage difficult people? Who is difficult in your life? And the bigger picture question is, what kind of difficult person are you? I'll see you at Module 6.